Ladies and gentlemen, Christopher Columbus is back. I'm Rich Lowry of National Review, and that was a new Columbus statue put up outside the Eisenhower Executive Office building on the White House grounds by President Trump in what is an inspired act of restoration. That thing is a replica of an original statue that was torn down in Baltimore a couple of years ago. So I want to get into a little bit what happened there, why Columbus should be honored, and why statues of such traditional American heroes are so important. But first up, this is the desecration that happened in Baltimore several years ago.
Christopher Columbus statue in Baltimore has been pulled down.
Toppled tonight during a protest.
Now, as you might guess, that was a scene from 2020 during the Black Lives Matter unrest in cities around the country. Now, that statue had been in Baltimore since 1984, had been unveiled at a ceremony that Ronald Reagan, president at the time, of course, attended in the Little Italy neighborhood of Baltimore. Now, there had been warnings by a Black Lives Matter associated group that they're going to come for this statue days before it was pulled down. Folks who supported it rallied around the statue. They tried to raise money to move it. Unsuccessful, obviously, because the Black Lives Matter people come in with a lasso, as we saw, pull this thing down, break it into multiple pieces, and just as a sign that they really meant business, they threw its parts into the Baltimore harbor.
And video on social media shows its head being thrown into the harbor.
You can see some of the debris, the marble that's left behind. And if I walk down these stairs over here, you can see the skid marks on the ground where the statue was taken and then thrown into the harbor.
Oh, they hate Columbus. They hate Columbus with the burning passion, right? Why? Well, one, they think he's at the root of so-called settler colonialism. Two, there's a deeper underlying hostility, as we've talked about very often in these videos, to our own civilization. Now, there are any number of counts you can make against Columbus. One, that he's wrong in a very big question, right? He thought he was seeking out Asia, or he wanted to seek out Asia, thought he had found Asia. He hadn't found Asia at all. Initially, he finds Bahamas. Pretty good place to find. We'll talk about that more in a minute, but it wasn't Asia. And he was just insistent on this point erroneously for years and years and years. Two, he was cruel and high-handed, not exceptionally so by the standards of the day, but he enslaved natives. Now, you'll often hear something that is wrong, that 7 natives he brought back to Spain after his initial voyage were brought back as slaves. That's not true. They were accorded all sorts of respect as honored guests. 3, we'll hear Columbus was responsible for genocide. Now, the native populations were devastated by disease. This was a terrible tragedy rather than a product of deliberate policy. Columbus was quite a religious man. He wasn't going out there to exterminate people during his explorations or during his time as governor. And by the way, the Spanish crown had no interest in that either. They viewed these new populations as new subjects of Spain. The final complaint you can make against Columbus has a lot of legitimacy, and that's that he was a terrible administrator, which he was at one point. Spanish authorities detain him, send him back to Spain in chains to answer for his woeful administration. But this had more to do with just a flaw in Columbus rather than intentional and malicious wrongdoing. And now you stack up on the other side, or you should, all the incredible advantages of this guy, all his incredible achievements. There's the incredible persistence. Even before he starts, he has to lobby for years and years to find someone to back the venture that he envisions before Ferdinand and Isabella finally relent and fund his voyage. Then there's the extraordinary courage involved in the voyage itself. This is a little bit like today saying, I'm going to go to Mars in a couple homemade spacecraft. This was just an incredibly perilous trek. Before, on this first voyage, they found the Bahamas and made landfall. There was going to be a mutiny, and he was going to have to turn around in days because people were so despairing and conditions were so difficult on these ships. They lose the Santa Maria, and they don't have enough room on the other two ships to take everyone back to Europe. So they leave 39 people. What happens to those people in that settlement? Well, when they eventually make it back, they're wiped out. So these were not forgiving conditions at all. And the return voyage to Europe was even more trying and more treacherous. At one point during a storm, Columbus was like, you know what? I want someone to find out what I did. And what I'm going to have to do is put a message in a bottle and throw it overboard because we're all going down. Now, eventually they do make it back, but just the bravery involved here was off the charts, literally. Right? I talked about the mistake he made in thinking he'd found Asia. Well, why did he think he found Asia? Because there are no maps. They had no idea where they were going. When they were heading back to Europe and they sighted land, they're like, is this Madeira? Is this the Azores? Is this Lisbon? No one has any idea what it is. Turned out to be the Azores. Now, he ends up going back and forth several times, ends up a governor, talking about that just a minute ago. But again, just to emphasize, this is not an easy job. This is not a forgiving environment. This is what Columbus wrote about his experience. They judge me over there as they would a governor who had gone to Sicily or to a city or town placed under regular government and where the laws can be observed in their entirety without fear of ruining everything. And I am greatly injured thereby. I ought to be judged as a captain who went from Spain to the Indies to conquer a numerous and warlike people whose customs and religion are very contrary to ours, who live in rocks and mountains without fixed settlements and not like ourselves, and where by the divine will I have placed under the dominion of the king and queen, our sovereigns, another world, through which Spain, which was reckoned a poor country, has become the richest. Now, all that aside, there's just this stupendous achievements as a navigator and as an explorer. Columbus and other explorers like him also catalyzed great advances in map making, geography, other aspects of science. And then Columbus has this outsized role in knitting together two continents across the Atlantic, unleashing this extraordinary exchange of ideas and people and goods in ways that shape the world as it exists today. This is one of the most important events of the last 2,000 years in Western and world history. It is so epic. There should almost be no words for it, but the left and outfits like Black Lives Matter, they hate him because they consider him a criminal and they consider Western civilization at its roots either a criminal enterprise or an illegitimate enterprise. So when they went out and toppled his statue in Baltimore, that was an act of revolution. This is what revolutionaries always do. They seek to change the landscape and efface the icons of the prior regimes. They always topple statues, sometimes for good, sometimes for ill. They're good revolutionaries and also noxious revolutionaries. Now, what the White House has done here is made a very explicit statement that the topplers did not prevail in this case. And there are very public-spirited people in Baltimore immediately after this happened to this statue, sent divers down into the Baltimore harbor to get the pieces, to bring them back up, do the very expensive, painstaking work to make two replicas, one of which now stands in an honored place in Washington, D.C., as a concrete proclamation of who we are as a people, of the glories of our history, and of the achievements of this great man. My hat's off to everyone who made this happen, and I hope everyone around the country who loves the Western tradition is similarly committed to maintaining these kind of very important public symbols of our history. I'm Rich Lowry, over and out.